So welcome to session 7. So one of the things that concerns parents the most, and that's probably what I see in my practice, is that parents just hesitate trying to separate because they just don't want to damage their kids. Everyone feels emotional about that. Nobody wants to cause kids harm. And the thought, though, is that causing them harm can also happen by staying in tension and conflict because they really get this model of relationship that's really discombobulating and also sometimes just feels like that's the biggest part of the family is the tension that's going on. So we want to look at co-parenting through the different ages. And the first one I want to represent is, when kids are like 0 to 5, say, there's a lot of just labor intensive things that are going on. Kids are attached pretty strongly to one caretaker over another sometimes. The shuffling back and forth can be stressful, but it can also be reassuring because they're still trying to learn object permanence, which is that things stay the same, that things are still there. So a lot of times it's, a toss up whether parents stay in touch with their kids in between times when they're not with them, because sometimes that can be upsetting for a child. And so you have to really measure if it's helpful or not. And then you also just have to anticipate that the younger child just needs some time to adapt and to remind them of the routine and the comfort, the smells and the different where places their beds are and all of that. Um, can be important to just keep reiterating over and over again. And then it's sensitivity in terms of like, yes, kids will have different attachment styles to each parent, different relationships, and each parent will have different parenting styles, and kids have to adjust to that. But sometimes I just think like this is their world. And so if that's all that they've known from the beginning, it's not going to be as discombobulating. But there's some personalities that are very sensitive and temperamental, and they'll always struggle in this picture. And that's why it's so important that parents come together and try to figure out like how can we make this transition go well? How can we really smooth it out? This is challenging, right? Because parents aren't often getting along during the very beginning stages. And it's also a lot on parents to go back and forth, remember everything, and then deal with the high level of labor intensity with their kids. So this just requires patience, maybe a lot of hands in the mix, and really reliable caretaking on either side. Because remember, bonding initially happens. There's the initial stage of trust and mistrust, which is the very, very beginning stages of adapting, of a child adapting to their parents, is just consistency and all their physical needs being met. That's how bonding happens. So just rely on that and know like if you're really attending to your child, hunger, sleep, um, playtime, stimulation, connection, that is going to help so much for them to feel like they have a safe spot with you wherever you are, and if they're going back and forth to each home. So then we get to ages like 5 to 9, which is elementary school ages, and kids are still concrete thinkers. They're not asking real details about like what happened between you two and what's the emotional elements. They're not asking that. They just want to know what's happening next. Who's picking them up? Who's dropping them off? Where are they going to be? And maybe how to handle their feelings about missing one parent when they're not with them. So those are more of the concerns. I love the small adjustments each parent can make by having like a calendar with color coded so the kids can look at the calendar and see when they're going to go back to the other parent, when the transitions are going to happen, pictures of the family together, of things that relatives that they're familiar with around their room. Sometimes that can be really triggering for the other parent, but to really make sure that you're putting your child first and thinking about what they need. And then it's again, it's back to consistency, stability, just knowing what the routine is, adapting to the routine. And at this stage, I always remind parents, like, don't make your kids too responsible beyond their developmental age to remember everything, to be parenting for the younger kids. Anything like that, like, try to just really ease up and let them have a soft landing with you, let them know what their responsibilities are when they walk into your house, and some of it might not be, "Where's your jacket?" or "Where's your shoes?" It might also be, like, that might be normal developmental stuff, like, "I left my jacket at school," or, "My shoes are at the other house," and so just make sure you watch your tension level when you're dealing with your 5 to 9-year-old, because they're actually probably a little more discombobulated as kids are when they go back and forth to anything, and to just make sure or try to remember all that stuff yourself and have a system set up that there's a transfer of items like 1 day a week, or there's a place outside each of your homes or apartments where you can leave things if somebody forgot something. So it's really easy, it's not punitive at all. The other thing that's so important is kids pick up on, your language, right? So just make sure that it's not like villain, hero, like I do everything great and the other parent does everything wrong. Just watch that comparison. I know it's difficult because sometimes it's so hard to, be neutral at this time. There's a lot of tension going on for parents behind the scenes, whether you're filing for divorce, whether you're creating new structure in your own life, jobs, money being restructured in the family, going through legal and financial divorce. So I get it. It can be so complicated on your end. But remember, like, click that switch. Try to really stay very centered and grounded when your kids are around. Really make it a practice. Get your own therapy to work out issues that you feel like you just cannot contain. But we want to make sure that there is no negative talk or referencing about the other parent. And then when you have the transition of your child, there should be nothing talked about in terms of all the details, except for like, hey, did you have a good time? It's great to see you. And maybe what's going to be happening as soon as they get into your space, or what will be happening when they come back to that other parent. And praising, right? Praising your child around, what they did that was so awesome when they were with you. And to note like the developmental growth that they're having, during that time. So, and then ritualize the return. Sometimes people have very similar things that they do when they see their child on the way home. They just might like always have a snack, always have a song that they're playing. When they say goodbye, same thing. Always have that transitional object. And by that, I mean something that makes your child feel comforted or comfortable, like the drawing that they made for their other parent, or a little note that you write them that's in their backpack, whatever it might be. But just ritualize this so they know what's happening next. So then we go to the tween and teen stage of development from like 10 to 17. That's a big range, right? There's so much developmental change in this period of time. But kids are developing their own individuality, their own autonomy. They are managing their loyalty conflicts between you and the other parent and maybe the two families. And oftentimes they get caught up in this, like how they're supposed to think, how they're supposed to feel. So watch your own neutrality as you watch your child develop and start having their own opinions about things. They need to have their own opinion about things because this is how they create their individuation. This is how they know who they are, because they see you're different and they see their other parents different. And so where are they gonna get to talk about that? If it feels like it's a hostile environment between you 2, parents, then get your kid in therapy so that your kid has a neutral place to talk about some of these things. Because what they're trying to do is develop, they hear both voices of both parents, which is completely normal, but they're trying to develop their own voice, which is a combination of both parents. Also, sometimes, since you're gonna start seeing this shift, of kids being much more peer oriented. This is challenging because you might have your kid for half the time, but they want to have a sleepover or go to a sleepover or events with their peers, and then you have like no time. So you have to remember that this is a normal stage of development. It's not happening to you because of the divorce. A lot of the behavioral changes are not because of the divorce, it's because of what's appropriate for them to be doing and to be shifting and changing and growing. So sometimes the times that are the most important for this age is basically just how you take care of your kid. Like they come home, it's the dinner, it's the morning routine, it's those very precious times of the day. But it's not a lot of time because their peers are around. They want their peers to be around. So you have to put yourself in a different mindset, as even any parent who's raising a tween or teen does or should. Read about it. Make sure you know, like, I'm not going to take this personally. My kid might be mad at me all the time, but that doesn't mean they like the other parent better than me. It's just like they're going to be mad. They're going to be frustrated. They're creating and developing their opinions about me, because that's what they got to do in order to grow. But oftentimes, what happens is the child or the teen tween has a preference for one parent or the other. So there's a few ways that I deal with this, and I'm going on the assumption that everybody is a-okay, that there's no extra tensions in the household from mental health issues or addictions of either parent, or negative relationships with maybe a blended family system, where like sometimes kids tell me that they go from a very calm environment where it's only one parent. And then when they go to their other parent's house, they're in a blended family situation, and it's like super chaotic. And there's a preference sometimes for each parent kid to have either environment, or maybe they feel like, hey, one parent is really lonely and depressed, and the other parent is really exciting and lots of stuff going on. And I'm saying that not to make you feel bad if you're one or the other, but to remember that it's not about you. Their development is about them. And how do you support their development? And that's the most important task for you at this point to do, is to support their development. And so if they have a preference, you might want to be flexible. Like, yes, it makes sense that since you're going to be going to that party that's closer to this parent's house, that you spend the night there because it's going to be late. And maybe there's flexibility between parents, which is the ultimate of switching times or accommodating so that people get most of their time. But I always say that it's so important, unless there's a problem, to keep reminding the child that both parents really want to have a relationship, and that relationship for both parents to have with that child is really important. I've seen really creative things that parents have done. For example, one parent, the child really preferred to live in one of the parents' houses. That was the house they grew up in. That's where all their stuff was. They liked their room the most. They knew the neighborhood, neighbors, easy to get to school. So the other parent actually just met them every morning for coffee, had dinners with them, and then occasionally they would have weekends. Sometimes it would be a fun weekend, like a weekend away. This was a big sacrifice because that parent had to mourn the loss of that developmental period that thought they were going to share with their child a different way. But they decided to make that step because that would strengthen their relationship with their teen even more, not to resist it. And so, and both parents were really, really sensitive about it. So when there were opportunities that the child really wanted to be, or the teen really wanted to be with the parent that they're not normally with, that they would be. And it would be this real easy scenario. So the child never felt like she was hurting anybody's feelings. So it's important to think about what's your child going through, why are they making this preference, and to remind yourself it's not about you. Unless it is, and then if it is about you, then it's really important to seek therapy to work on that relationship and to work on yourself if the teen's not ready to work on the relationship with you. And one big note around raising teens and tweens is you have to change your parenting style. Your kid knows how to say no. They know how not to do the things they don't want to do. So there needs to be a lot more negotiation, even negotiation around consequences, around something that they need to have some kind of consequence for. Like, what do you think the consequence should be for this? I think it should be that. Which one do you want to choose? That kind of thing. So they're more involved with their own outcomes. And the other is that if there is a disagreement or argument, that you have to really start teaching skills like repair. How do we repair an argument? So they might have gotten a model of tension in their upbringing, but you're working on showing them a different model of how to be with you. So it might be apologizing to them if you did something like off the cuff that wasn't okay. That gives a child, a teen, tween permission to like, yeah, I can make a mistake and I can apologize and it's not the end of the world. And repair. And I always think repair has 5 steps, and I've said this a million times. It might be 4 steps, I'll make it shorter, is you let the person talk about what was hard about what you did, what was hard about what they did, and then you talk about how you made you feel. And then you talk about the different behavior you'll do the next time, and then you sincerely say that you were sorry, and you ask your child, teen, tween, to do the same thing towards you, and then you let it go. And you don't do this in the heat of an argument. You do this when everybody's calm and you've been able to kind of gather your thoughts and sincerely want to have a good relationship with your teen and to have a healthy household and to continue to grow and change around all of these things, because there's many challenges when kids are teens, many, and it's really important to do whatever you can to get support to parent your teen. And sometimes it's the best stage ever, and sometimes it's the most challenging stage. So whatever is your scenario, get support. Okay, so now we're looking at young adults, right? And adult children, 18 to 25. So we're going through if your kids went to college or started to train themselves in some kind of choice that would be able to support them. And their time is even more limited when they come back. Maybe there's a primary house that they want to live in. Maybe they're in relationships so that you don't actually see them that much. They're going to the other person's house. So there's really a reauthoring of what is your connection to your adult child at this stage. And you aren't going to know until you're there. There's a lot of moving parts now. So I think one of the biggest tips to remind yourself is try not to have expectations. Try not to set up things that make you feel bad, like, oh, what about the holidays? I won't be able to celebrate it with them. Or they prefer the other parent. Oh, I barely get them. All of those times, that tug of war feeling, like somebody is really upset that they can't see you as much as they want. And then when you end up seeing them, there's such tension, it's not really a good time. That's the piece to work on. So sometimes I tell people, like, if you did a great job during the earlier years of working on your relationship and working out your tension, you're probably going to have a lot more flexibility between your kids and the other parent and their new life and your new life. But that's not always the case because there's alliances. And there's also this other piece that your child's probably been doing all along their tween and teen stages, is trying to figure out their opinion about what happened, their opinion about who you are. Now, I'm going to differentiate that and say, even in a family that there isn't a divorce, kids are doing that. Kids are deciding whether they like you or not, or like your life choices. And then if they have a good relationship with you, they're going to talk about that. They're also going to emulate you in some ways. But you want to make sure that when there's these big celebrations for your kids, even if you have a parallel parenting situation where you don't get along with the other parent, you've pretty much disconnected from the relationship, that when there are events, you give a lot of permission for not to have sort of a hold on the kids, but ask them how they want thing to go and how they want you to be involved with the celebration. There's nothing worse than both people can't be in the hospital room when someone's having a baby, or both people can't go to drop their kid off at college, or come to the graduation. So if it is that you both can't sit together, that you just say it, yeah, we don't get along, we don't sit together, we're going to have our two dinners, one of us going to have lunch, the other one's going to have dinner. Um, you try to work it out based on that there is a connection with both parents, if possible. And sometimes there is this one down parent that kind of got the short end of the stick, whether that's true or not, or built on resentment. It's unclear. But to try to make sure that you talk about these things directly, not in a way that makes the other parent look bad, but the way the focus is on, I want to be with you, I want to connect with you around this important event. So how can I do that that doesn't cause you a lot of stress? So I want you to keep that in mind, that your life with your child, adult child, is an organic thing that will continue to progress. And of course, there's nothing worse than being left out of it, but that also might mean that there needs to be some work. And if the adult child is willing to have therapy at that point, that would be great. And if you need to do your own work to accept some of what's going on, that is also important. So remember, it's not linear path, it's a organic path. It changes, it ebbs and flows. So hang in there around the parenting and how it changes with developmental ages.